You're outside at night, soaked to the skin. It's 20 degrees and the wind keeps cutting. Your fingers are going numb, your clothes are turning stiff, and there isn't a spark of fire anywhere. No cabin, no blanket, no matches, just darkness, wet ground, and your own body heat. How long would you actually last? Your ancestors did. That's why you're here. But they didn't have a button. They had a spark, some dry wood, and a few hours before the cold started shutting their body down. Lose the fire, and you lose everything. And that sounds like the whole story. Fire keeps you warm, fire cooks meat, fire pushes the dark back. But here's the thing. Some early humans may have walked into cold northern winters before we can prove they had fire whenever they needed it. Not once. For hundreds of thousands of years. At Happisburgh, on the Norfolk coast of England, archaeologists found stone tools in ancient sediments. Then the sea exposed something even more personal. Footprints. Adults and children moving across an estuary almost a million years ago. The prints were dated roughly 850,000 to 950,000 years old. And this was not some warm green paradise. The winters may have sat around freezing, sometimes down near -3 degrees Celsius. Think about that for a second. Children on a cold British coast long before the campfire becomes obvious in the European record. That is the problem hiding under the question. Maybe they had fire and it left almost no trace. Maybe they borrowed it from lightning and guarded it like a living thing. Or maybe, sometimes, they had no fire at all. And here's why that was so terrifying. Your naked body is happiest in air around 29 degrees Celsius. Below that, it has to start spending energy just to stay the same temperature. First, the blood vessels in your skin tighten. Warm blood gets pulled away from your fingers and toes, back toward the core. Then your muscles start shaking without permission. That shaking is heat, but it is not free heat. Hard shivering can raise heat production to about 5 times your resting level. That sounds useful until you realize every shiver is spending fuel you may not replace. And in winter, fuel means food. If your core temperature drops below about 35 degrees, hypothermia has begun. Below 32, the shivering can slow right when you need it most. Below 28, consciousness starts slipping away, and the heart becomes dangerous. The terrifying part of hypothermia is that the colder you get, the worse you get at saving yourself. You stop making good choices. You stop moving correctly. Eventually, the body that kept you alive starts quietly turning down. So if the fire fails, the first answer is obvious. Make it again. But now, here's where the story gets uncomfortable. Fire was not a single invention. It was a ladder. At the bottom, you find natural fire. Lightning hits a tree, a landscape burns, and someone gets close enough to take a branch. The next step is keeping that branch alive. Feeding it. Sheltering it from rain. Sleeping lightly because one careless hour can erase tomorrow. Only much later do you get the thing we imagine automatically. A kit that can make sparks on purpose. At Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, researchers found microscopic burned plant material and bone around 1 million years old. That is early and important, but it doesn't mean every group everywhere had fire on demand. At Gesher Beno Yaakov in Israel, around 790,000 years ago, people left burned seeds, burned wood, and heated flint. That looks like repeated fire use, not one lucky accident. By Kesem Cave about 300,000 years ago, the fire sits in the middle like a heart. Ash, micro-charcoal, burned flint, burned bones, temperatures over 500 degrees. Now, fire is not just warmth. It is the room. But here's where the story takes a turn nobody expects, because the best evidence for making fire comes from cold England. At Barnum, Suffolk, researchers reported burned sediment, fire-cracked hand axes, and 2 pieces of iron pyrite around 400,000 years old. Iron pyrite matters because if you strike it with flint, it can throw sparks. And the pyrite was rare nearby, which means someone may have carried it there on purpose. A burning log is useful. A carried ember is better. But a spark-making kit changes the rules. Fire becomes portable knowledge. And that leads to the older, harder question. What happens before the kit? You do not replace a campfire with one miracle. You replace it with a pile of small advantages. A windbreak, a dry sleeping place, a full stomach. Other bodies pressed close enough that heat becomes shared property. And the first winter technology may not have looked like technology at all. It may have looked like a mother pulling a child under a hide. Because adults are not the real bottleneck, babies are. A baby is small, loses heat fast, cannot walk itself warm, and cannot choose a better shelter. So winter survival was never just, can the hunter endure the cold? It was, can the newborn make it to morning? Catherine MacDonald has argued that in early Northwest Europe, fire-free survival could work only if advantages stacked together. Not naked people in a blizzard. People in cool, seasonal places using bodies, shelter, bedding, clothing, food, and timing. Clothing works for a simple reason. It traps air. The hide is not magic. The still air under it slows the escape of heat. Loose fur, dry grass bedding, and snow-packed windbreaks all play the same game. Slow the loss. Buy one more hour, then one more. And your body is not passive in this. In 2009, scientists showed that adult humans can have active brown fat. Brown fat burns fuel to make heat without making you shake. With repeated cold exposure, the body can recruit more of that hidden furnace. In one cold acclimation study, people shivered about 20% less for similar heat production. So ancient people were not just pretending the cold didn't hurt. Their bodies may have been trained by the season. And in some lineages, the body itself changed shape. Neanderthals were built like heat-conserving tanks. Broad trunks, shorter lower arms and legs, less surface for heat to leak away. A tall, narrow body dumps heat beautifully on a hot plane. A compact body holds it in. But even the best body needs fuel. And winter survival was really a calorie problem wearing a weather mask. Lean meat was not enough. Too much protein without enough fat can make people sick. The treasure was marrow, grease, and the rich stuff hidden inside bones. At Neumarkt Nord in Germany, Neanderthals around 125,000 years ago processed bones on a huge scale for those inner nutrients. Researchers have described it almost like a fat factory. Picture hours of smashing bones, heating fragments, skimming grease, turning an animal body into future warmth. They were not just hunters, they were winter accountants. Every bit of fat meant another night of heat. Now here's where the survival stack gets more interesting. At Schöningen in Germany, the same place famous for wooden spears, researchers found cut marks on cave bear paw bones. The cuts sit where skinning cuts make sense. Around 320,000 to 300,000 years ago, someone may have been taking bear pelts. A bear skin is dangerous to get, heavy to carry, hard to scrape before it stiffens in the cold. But under it, shivering might turn into sleep. And then comes one of the strangest clues in the whole story. Not a coat, a louse. Body lice live in clothing, so their family tree can act like a clock for when clothing became habitual. One study estimated body lice appeared around 72,000 years ago, give or take a huge margin. Another pushed clothing lice back at least 83,000 years, maybe as far as 170,000. Clothing almost never fossilizes, but parasites remember. And once you have real tailored clothing, winter changes again. A draped hide is good. A fitted sleeve is better. A boot that closes around the ankle is not decoration. It is survival engineering. Eyed bone needles appear in northern Eurasia around 40,000 to 35,000 years ago. At Yana RHS in Arctic Siberia, around 33,000 years ago, archaeologists found 192 eyed needles and needle fragments. 192. That is not random skins thrown over shoulders. That is an Arctic industry. Someone sat in the cold dark making needles small enough to thread. Survival depended on patience. And clothing was only one wall of the system. At Dolní Věstonice in what is now Czechia, people built an upper Paleolithic settlement around 30,000 years ago. Huts, hearths, mammoth remains, burials, tiny ceramic figures. At Mazirich in Ukraine, much later, people built shelters from mammoth bones. Skulls, tusks, long bones, hides, wood, maybe bark. A house made from the animal that fed you. That is the kind of thinking winter rewards. Nothing wasted, nothing left to luck if hands can change it. Now here's the part nobody talks about. Without reliable fire, winter may have changed how humans treated each other. A lone adult can keep moving. A group can make heat while sleeping. A carrier can hold a baby against an adult body and reduce the cost of carrying it. MacDonald notes that infant carriers may reduce maternal carrying costs by about 16%, but the number almost feels too clean for what it means. It means a mother can carry warmth, protection, and mobility in the same object. It means a baby does not have to survive winter alone. And that may be older than the perfect spark. But there is one late idea so strange that it has to be handled carefully. At Cima de los Huesos in Spain, hominins around 430,000 years ago left a deep collection of bones. Two researchers proposed that some bone problems there resemble patterns linked to seasonal hibernation, or torpor. Not cartoon sleeping through winter. Something more like slowing down, the way large mammals can enter a winter torpor. Many scientists are skeptical, and they should be. But even as a question, it shows how extreme the winter problem was. Did some ancient humans survive by making better tools? Almost certainly. By changing their clothes? Yes. By changing their camps? Again and again. But maybe winter also pressed on biology, sleep, hunger, patience, and care. That is why the gap matters. Happisburgh puts early humans in cold Britain nearly 1,000,000 years ago. Barnum suggests deliberate spark making around 400,000 years ago. Between those moments is a huge dark space. And the people in that space could not wait for archaeology to become clear. They had to get through the night. So when you ask how they survived without fire, the answer is not one thing. It is a system. Fire if they had it. Hides to trap air, shelters to break wind, fat to feed the furnace, needles to close the gaps, memory to know where wood, animals, stone, and shelter would be when the cold came back. And people close enough to keep the smallest bodies alive. Fire was not just warmth. It was time. It let humans stretch the day, cook more food, sleep in colder places, and carry a piece of the sun into the night. But before fire became dependable, survival may have depended on something even more fragile. Other people. Because a spark can die. A coal can go cold, but a group that knows how to share heat, food, shelter, and care can make it to dawn. And somewhere in that long winter before the perfect fire, that may be the reason you're here.